Hi everyone. I know that for a fact that most of you here are familiar with formative usability testing and why I wouldn't say why we do it, but the effectiveness of it. I'm not sure if many of us have thought about the value of it in terms of why we do it as a method and why we don't use another method in its place. Right? So that's something that we would discuss today. So usability testing, as you all know, is one of the most effective ways of iterative design of user-friendly software or applications. And the the why as to why we do usability testing lies in the principle of cognitive task analysis. So this is a method that helps us to understand how people think, learn, and interact with systems, and it involves eliciting knowledge, analyzing data, and representing that knowledge in ways consistent with how humans do cognition. So, to break the first part of eliciting knowledge down, let's explore two main classifications in terms of how to look and where to look. How to look would be the four types of data collection methods for how to look would be interview, self report, observe, and automatic capture of it, where um, interviews is about asking people questions and probing and things like that. Self report is about people talking about or recording their behaviors and strategies to achieve certain things. Observation is a performance or task behavior. And automated collection of behavioral data is the fourth method. And finding from one interview can be treated with greater confidence when they are replicated across interviews with other participants or corroborated with other methods. Interviews have disadvantages as well. Example, getting good data depends on participants being able and willing to reflect deeply on their performance and their work. And people may be reluctant sometimes to divulge details to some events. They may be mistaken in some cases because memory is not always right, or they may have limited information about what happened and why it happened. In terms of self reporting, it ranges from structured formats like surveys and questionnaires to open ended formats like diary and logs. Observation can be particularly effective when the researchers are well trained in the art of observing and do not require a lot of structure to do the data collection. Structured observational procedures like predetermined formats may be desirable if the research demands some degree of quantification. I remember doing an India leg of a global project with a very rigid framework to test a science website for school students, which provided almost no opportunity to observe anything different. So this is by design because sometimes it's useful, specifically in those situations where when the principal researcher is not myself and it was somebody else, and they were not part of that study, so they wanted control of that study, and this is one way of ensuring the control of it. And without a real checklist or other predetermined formats of how to log the observations, researchers may wind up figuring out these coding categories afterwards, or they might make a mess of it by uh, making a mess of the category description, coding instructions, or any of that stuff, right? So they may also find uneven coverage in their data because the observers were unaware of its significance. But then the advanced structuring has disadvantages as well, as I mentioned earlier, like alluded to it earlier. It may sometimes make it too rigid of a framework to observe and note something happening out of the ordinary, or take advantage of a rich opportunity to document something completely unexpected, right? So anything that's out of the ordinary, anything that is unexpected, it doesn't afford that flexibility to do that. And observation is best when it is coupled with other forms of data collection methods as well, such as interviews to find out how the participant were viewing the events. Just by recording the events and actions taken can result in a misleading account sometimes because it would be a cognitively shallow account of things. Next broad classification is to where to look. And where to look involves uh, past, present, future, whether it's real time versus simulation, whether it is abstract versus specific, or whether to look for novice users or expert users. All these would result in different nuances in terms of the type of information that we would gather and how we gather it as well. Um, and one of the most powerful means of eliciting knowledge is to study prior incidents that were challenging, to see what made them so difficult and why someone succeeded or failed making the right decision. But the primary disadvantage of retrospective incident accounts is that people may forget or even distort key details, where memory is usually fragile, and data from retrospective accounts should be treated as a source of hypothesis or a record of events that usually requires independent verification, right? So this is why we use usability testing. Collecting data concurrently avoids many of these issues in retrospective data gathering, because it is happening in real time. You have an ability to sort of corroborate things. You have an ability to sort of probe follow-up questions. You also have an ability to observe and think aloud of the participant. So some scientific scientific investigation of this was done by Erickson and Simon in 1984. So that's something to it's interesting to look at. This cannot be combined in real time because a distraction it can provide to the actual event. Especially in very critical tasks. For example, imagine a firefighter having to think aloud by performing firefighting task, which is unacceptable, right? So the possibility there is to create a potential scenario and test it accordingly, and this is why and with think aloud obviously, and this is why we conduct the usability testing the way it is. And one of the best practices is to do like participant debrief to fill any gap after the usability study. So that almost always ensures that all these nuances that we discussed earlier are taken into account, and uh, they are sealed from any such mistakes that could have caused incorrect data or uneven data or rigid too rigid of a data or any of those situations that we discussed. So the reason why I brought these up uh, recently, like as well in some of the other contexts, is to ensure that we appreciate that there is scientific precedence to many things that we do today, and it is not just a random thought by somebody to just do usability testing, and that is the that's then everybody started following it. No, there is scientific basis to it, and that is why we are doing it. And hopefully you found this video useful, and until we meet again, this is Anup Jayakumar signing off. Thank you.